am thrilled and honored to finally have an opportunity to talk to Dr. Silber, somebody who is really revolutionizing betrayal syndrome. I've had an opportunity to study her by way of YouTube, some of her podcasts. She has her own podcast called From Betrayal to Breakthrough. And we're going to get into a couple of things today, specifically things that are aligned with what we're trying to do as a platform and as a brand. And that's that recovery component. She's mastered that, and she's been able to help a lot of individuals break through from that betrayal syndrome. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Terry Silber.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a thrill to be here, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So Dr. Silber, talk me a little bit, through your upbringing, where you're from. You obviously have brand recognition. I know you're from New York. That's all I know. Give me a little bit more visibility to, how you've evolved as a person in New York.
Sure. Okay. Well, call me Debbie, please.
Okay.
It's here I am. I've been in health and mindset and personal development since 1991. So I've been at this a long time. And as I changed, so did my business. And it started in health, where I thought, well, okay, if you eat well and exercise, that's all you need. I was dead wrong. If you have stressful relationships, toxic relationships, an overwhelming amount of stress, a chaotic lifestyle, it'll do you in. And it did. I wound up in the hospital, and I said, okay, well, there's got to be something to this. And then from there, I learned what the role stress plays. And so I became then a functional diagnostic nutritionist and a whole health coach and a holistic dietitian and a personal trainer, all that stuff. And then trauma. And trauma, it was a whole other nugget. And I had a horrible betrayal from my family. And you know how the universe works. If you don't quite learn the lesson, you get more opportunities. Well, I did. This time it was my husband. Blindsided. Yeah, that's the only word I can think of. And not maybe what many people would do, but I was desperate to understand why people do these things and how I could heal. And I enrolled in a PhD program. It was in transpersonal psychology, the psychology of transformation and human potential. I was just truly desperate to understand this and to heal. And so here I was now. I had a business and 4 kids and 6 dogs, and I'm in a PhD program, just desperate to move forward, having no clue what was going to show up. It was time to do a study. So I studied betrayal. What holds us back, what helps us heal, and what happens to us when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. And that study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries and changed everything.
You've gone on the record, Debbie, as saying that betrayal, the hurt that you get from betrayal, is completely different from, somebody passing, a close friend, significant other, a spouse. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. And that was actually one of the discoveries. Originally I was studying something called, because I like the upside of something, I don't like just diving into the trauma and staying there. It's too dark. It's too painful. So I was originally studying trauma and post-traumatic growth. And post-traumatic growth is like the upside of trauma, how that trauma leaves you with a new insight, perspective, awareness that you didn't have before that happened. But I had been through death of a loved one. I'd been through disease. I was in the ICU for 11 days with peritonitis, a deadly infection. And but betrayal felt different for me, but I didn't want to assume it. So that it was the same for everybody. So I asked all my study participants when I was doing this study, I said, if you've been through something in addition to betrayal, another trauma, does it feel different for you? Is it the same? Hands down, unanimously, they said it is so different. And so it didn't feel like calling it post-traumatic growth would be a fit, because with other traumas, you grieve, you're sad, you mourn the loss, but you don't question your sanity. You don't take it personally necessarily. With betrayal, because it feels so intentional, we take it so personally. So the whole self has to be rebuilt. Rejection, abandonment, confidence, worthiness, belonging, trust, they're all shattered. They all have to be rebuilt. So that healing needed its own term, its own name, which is now called post-betrayal transformation.
In your experience, how long does it take for someone to really evolve, right? Transform. And you talk about that, and we'll get into that in a second.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you have somebody recognize where they're at in that pain meter,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's 7, and my 7 may be different from yours, but nonetheless, it's still high for them. Like what are the what are the steps required to move along? I'm not saying to get healed completely, but
Mm-hmm.
to get moving in that path towards recovery.
Right. And that was actually, it's a great question. And that was actually one of the other discoveries, that while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and many of us do, if we're going to heal, we're going to move through 5 now proven predictable stages. You can't skip them. You can't change the order. You can stop. You don't have to move through them. But if you do, you'll move through all 5. But here's what's so interesting. As much as I would love to say, oh, it takes this amount of time. Doesn't work like that, because what I found was one of the biggest needle movers for change and for healing is willingness.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I've had people who say, I want to heal, with the arms folded. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. If you're not willing to give up the story and all the benefits you get along with it, and you do, and we can talk about those, you're not going anywhere. So that's just one thing. I mean, there are so many factors that come into place, come into play with regard to our healing, our willingness, the kind of support we have, the tools we have, so many factors, but willingness is a huge one.
It's funny because that is one pillar as an addict in recovery, and the people that I work with to help them get moving in the right direction. There's no promises as to how long it's going to take. Just know that the path to get there is this way, at least for this addict. And the number one thing is the willingness to change, right? It's a decision to stop drinking and drugging, and then the willingness to change.
Yeah.
And that opens up like freedom, all the things that go with it. So yeah, I could not agree with you more.
And we see this is a classic out of the 5 stages, and I can even get into all the stages. We see this in a classic stage 3. There are so many benefits for that person staying right there. They form an entire life around it. They're going nowhere. And it's interesting. My first TEDx that I did was really on how we numb, avoid, distract ourselves from something painful, too painful to feel or face. And we're doing that. And in doing that, we think we're healing, we're just keeping something at bay. But I'll tell you, it's what the study showed also was, I thought that the people who were the hardest hit would grow the least because they had so much to overcome. That had nothing to do with it at all. Nothing. It was the people who would face it, feel it, heal it. Those were the ones who would just move through it way more than something who was drugging, drinking, avoiding.
In your experience, what flips the switch for those individuals that want, that say, hey, I'm finally willing.
Yeah. I think
I was dipping my toe, but now I'm going in head first.
Yeah, I think it's this. I think when the pain of where you are becomes greater than the fear of the unknown, you jump, and not a moment before.
So good. So good. Where are you at right now with your career? Some of the great things besides being, somebody who is pioneering this new category. At least it is for me, and maybe it's not. But I guess ignorance is bliss. I guess. Where are you at right now? What are some of the things that you're working on?
Yeah, when these discoveries were made, it was just way too good to keep to myself. It's like, how do you now have a predictable formula to help people heal from betrayal and move along with your day? I mean, that just wasn't making any kind of sense. So what I did was I was like, okay, well, how do I get this out there? So I, of course, created programs, and then the programs just moved people predictably through those stages. And then I was like, oh, okay, let me certify coaches who can have deeper transformations for their own clients. And then most recently, what we did was I created the PBT Institute membership community, which actually is really a collection of what the study proved we need to heal, and the over 8,000 responses to our post-betrayal syndrome assessment, to see to what extent someone's struggling, what helped me heal, what helped my clients and members heal. And we put that all together inside this amazing membership community. So now really all I'm doing every day is creating awareness. The book Trust Again is coming out really soon. the podcast, just anything that gives people hope so they know you're not alone, you're not crazy, and you could heal from all of it. I'm living proof.
Excellent. It's funny that the individuals that I work with, as we're mapping out just the call to action to really kind of start moving the needle, to use one of your points, they often want to hear about my trauma, just so that it's that relatability, right? And if it's okay, can we talk a little bit about yours and
Oh, sure.
how it gives you you're taking your personal experience,
Mm.
and it was deep, and now you're using it to help others. And I'll tell you the reason why I want to hear this is because for me, for the longest time, I thought nobody would want to hear my story.
Yeah.
I thought nobody could benefit from my trauma, the fact that I lived in an abyss, the fact that I felt helpless, hopeless. And today, it's every day where I get people telling me, continue sharing your story. It's one of hope, regardless of whether that person or the person that you're impacting is a drug addict, an alcoholic, somebody dealing with a nasty divorce. Just this message of hope and hanging onto that rope where you say, hey, I have a chance because I've seen other people who have, undergone a different circumstance, but I'm following their lead. I get that from you. I really do.
Yeah, and thank you. You know what it is? It's like if you've been through something so traumatic, so painful, and if you don't do something good with it, it's like a bad game of hot potato. It's just sitting on you, and it's like you just feel like such a sucker. And I just look at it like, at the very least, you owe it to yourself to do something really good with something really bad. I'm not doing anything different than anybody else could do. I mean, it just happened to me. This was a horrible, and I'm happy to share, horrible experience. But there was a part of me that said, there's got to be a reason for this, and there's got to be healing that's going to come out of this. And if there is, I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. And so with me, it was, well, there was the family betrayal, and then it was my husband, and we've been together since 1984. So first 20 years were great, raising kids and everything. And he just started taking off just with his business, and I just started becoming very spiritual. That was where I felt kind of grounded. And we just were on two completely different universes. And then, that day of discovery, D-Day, it was just incredibly painful. So I got him out of the house because I thought, okay, this is about me now. And this is what a lot of people don't do, where they just try to overlook, or no, this was like, this was, now it's my turn. I have to see what I want here. And what was so great was, and I think for him, he actually was the one who sat the kids down. And when you have 4 teenagers looking at you, like, you did what to our mom? If anything is going to have you fall from grace and wake you up, it's that. And so he was just kind of undergoing his own transformation on his own. And I was just working on mine. And that was my only agenda. And the kids were like, Mom, whatever, we're good. We're behind you, whatever you want to do. And one of the first things I did, I saw an intuitive coach, an intuitive counselor. And this is what's so interesting. And this is so typical of people who've been betrayed. You don't trust yourself. Because you're like, I'm a bright person. How did I not see? No, whatever. And you certainly don't trust your betrayer. So you figure, well, I could trust in the universe, God, source, whatever. So I did. And she seemed to have a direct line. So I was like, oh, I'll see her. And I walk into the office. It was like I was sitting down maybe 2 minutes. And she goes, oh my gosh, how you two planned this? Planned. She said, yeah. You needed something so catastrophic to crash and burn, so that you could heal. And then you can teach from this deep place of knowing. He needed to crash and burn so he can become the husband, father, friend he's supposed to be. You're going to be having a huge following, and you could be writing books. You'll have this institute. I'm like, you're crazy. Every single thing she said happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, it's that battle of the ego and the soul. Who do you listen to? There was not a cell of me, as far as my ego went, that was okay with this. But there was a part of me that said, well, what if she's right? I don't know.
Thank you for sharing that. It's not easy. For people in our field, it's easy because we've done it, a number of times. You talked about the word transformation,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard some of your TED Talks and some of your lectures on resilience versus transformation.
Yeah.
Can you walk our listeners through what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. There's such a big difference. And I'll give you an analogy of a house because it just makes it so clear, and you'll see it so easily. So resilience is bringing back, restoring. And you need that for your everyday. So like, let's say you have a house and that house needs a boiler and you get a boiler. That would be resilience. Let's say it needs a paint job and you paint. That would be resilience. You're bringing it back. You're restoring. Here's trauma and transformation. A tornado comes by and levels your house. A new boiler's not going to fix it. A new paint job's not going to fix it. Both of those things aren't going to fix it. Now, here's the thing. You have every right to stand there and you can stare at your lot and you can cry and scream and kick and carry on until your last breath. You really do. And you can call all your friends over and say, look at this. Isn't this the most horrible thing you've ever seen? And every one of them would agree. And you have every right to mourn that house until your last day. However, should you choose to rebuild the house, you don't have to, but if you choose to, there's nothing there. Why build the same house? Why not give it everything the old house didn't have? That's transformation. Rebuilding is always a choice. Whether you rebuild yourself and move on, that's what I did with my family. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something entirely new with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband not long ago. We married each other again. As two totally different people, and our kids is our bridal party.
So beautiful. One of the principles that, that we are anchored to here at Altered State, we do everything with, and not to be, fluffy, it's really with hope and with love, right? And I think that when you have, and when you intentionalize things with love, it's such a it's a term that people are scared to use, but if you really feel it, you can use it, and you can use it effectively. Love that transformation. Where are you at? Have you had any, maybe an opportunity to work with any alcoholics, addicts? How are they different? How are we different to work with versus somebody who's dealing with maybe a trauma that was related to a marriage?
Yeah. Well, typically what I see is addiction is tied to trauma. So there's always a reason. We're not just addicted because we just feel like it. There's always something there. At the root of it, there's always something there. But what I see is under all that addiction is a tremendous amount of pain. There's always pain. Like, for example, when I used to be in a weight loss, and I remember she was an emotional leader. And one day I just said, why? And she said, Debbie, I eat so I don't feel. I don't want to feel because if I feel, I'm going to think. And if I start thinking, I'm going to cry. And if I start to cry, I'm never going to stop. That's what we do. And that's why we're using these things. And that's okay too, because you do that until you're done. And until you say, life stinks. That's it. I deserve so much better than this. And, people think that change takes time. It doesn't. Seeing the change takes time. Maybe implementing all that change takes time. Change happens with that decision. And it's that decision that you're so much better than the way you're showing up. That's when we start to change. And that's when we say, you know what? This doesn't serve me out anymore. I've outgrown it. It's like, let's say a little kid who has a favorite blue shirt. They grow. It's not that the blue shirt became bad. They've outgrown it. They've just outgrown it. And if we can look at it like we've outgrown the need for that, it's time to face these things, to become higher and better, a better version of ourselves. That's what happens. And then we do. And there's always a next beautiful chapter waiting when we make those decisions.
When you look at least for me, you're talking about early in recovery, I had to, of course, put the plug in the jug, not go out, literally invest in just thinking differently. And in that, you talk about like sitting with your feelings. And as a result of that, I had to, like, for the first year in recovery, I slept a lot. I slept more. I mean, I basically made up for the last, for the previous 3 years. I'm not kidding. Some would say, hey, that's, a sign of depression. My body was just asking for it, right? It was just tired of just, the playback and that victim mentality. But that choice to get clean and sober allowed me to say, hey, once I made that choice, change was immediate. Like the process for change was immediate. And that's what motivated me, at least early on. The motivators have changed over time, of course. That's the beauty of, evolving, because I'm of the opinion people don't change, people evolve. So that's important for me to really look at it in those terms. When you look at Debi, what are some of the things that she's motivated by right now?
It really transformation. I mean, I see people coming in feeling so broken. We're never broken, bent, but they feel so broken. They can't even imagine how they can possibly move through this. And it's all about rebuilding the self. And when they do, all of a sudden they regain their health, their energy. They see things differently, their confidence. And with that, they're ready to make some different decisions. Those decisions are, just it creates this upward spiral. Now they want to treat themselves better. Now they want to be with different people who inspire them. And I'm sure you noticed this too. When you were healing, your old crowd didn't work anymore. You just can't be with them because they served you on some level. But when you're headed for growth, you can't be, if you're serious about it, you just can't stay with them because you'll stay there. And that's one of the biggest reasons, I'll tell you why, and I talked about this in my first TEDx, why people sabotage themselves. They're afraid to outgrow their group. It's really uncomfortable. So what happens is they've made those decisions. They had that insight. They had that new awareness. They're starting to feel good. They're venturing into personal, professional, development of some kind. And then they meet up with their friends, or they think about their friends, and their friends are like, thinking they're weird or different or whatever. So what do? So, well, I can't afford to lose my group, my tribe. So they abandon all of that to stay stuck. But it's something actually, as people move from a stage 3 to a stage 4 in the 5 stages of betrayal, I see all the time. But if you know it's coming, it's not as scary.
Debbie, do you have like a course or something that, the listeners can say, hey, I want a piece of that. That's good cake. I want that. Give me 2 slices, 3, or maybe even 4. Is there something that you can kind of share with us that will maybe take them to your website?
Sure. I would say definitely what they want to do is take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz, because that was one of the other discoveries. There's this collection of physical, mental, and emotional symptoms so common to betrayal. It's known as post-betrayal syndrome. And the quiz shows you to what extent you're struggling. So that's just at thepbtinstitute.com/quiz.
thepbtinstitute.com/quiz. Perfect.
thepbtinstitute.com/quiz. Yep. And they'll see exactly where they're struggling.
Perfect. And then any other social platforms that you provide, I guess, a listing of your offerings?
All of them. Just, my name. But everything's really at thepbtinstitute.com. You'll see everything there.
Perfect. Sincere thank you for your time. I'm leaving this podcast a better person as a result of what we engaged on, even before the podcast and me sharing my story and just your alignment to those principles. And then just looking at betrayal a little bit differently from a different lens. That's ultimately all I want for this platform, for people to look at it in those terms. So sincere thank you. I wish you a lot of luck. Let's continue to dialogue and collaborate, and anything you need, I'm just a phone call away.
Oh, thank you so much. And remember, addiction is self-betrayal. So it's nothing we can't heal.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.